What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted selves. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know that's the absolute truth, dear friends. I am so glad I'm here. No place I'd rather be. And I missed you last week. I'll tell you what I was up to. But first, I want to welcome you to Who Do You Think You Are? This is a podcast that is dedicated to helping you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself in every situation, how to live from a place of genuine and deep self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your psychological masks, connect with your truest essence, and simply live life more easily. Because we know that when we approach life in this way, we naturally and organically and effortlessly have more room, more generosity, and more love for others. And dear friends, when have we needed that more in our lives? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad to be back. I missed you last week. I'll tell you where I was. I was on a wonderful, beautiful, heart-opening, grounding retreat at a terrific place called the Kripalu Retreat Center in Massachusetts. And I was on a retreat with Tama Keeves. If you tuned in a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago by now, you heard me have what I think was a very thought-provoking, very engaging conversation with Tama, whose new book, Learning to Trust Yourself, just came out. And so she ran a retreat based on the principles of her book. And I have to say, if you've never done a retreat before, I wholeheartedly recommend doing so. And if you can get together with her and work with her, I give that 5 stars, would highly recommend. It was a really beautiful experience. You're there with a group of like-minded people. You're having meals together. You're really immersed in the work for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You're away from the routine of your life, and you're just really steeped and immersed in a beautiful atmosphere of love and safety and acceptance. So if you ever have a chance to do a retreat at something or some place like Kripalu or the Omega Institute, or if there's anyone else whose work you love and believe in and want to get more of, and they're doing a retreat, by all means, run, don't walk. It's a wonderful experience. And if you can ever catch Tama, do yourself a favor and get to her. All right, so that's where I was. Let's go back 2 weeks ago, where I began this extended conversation on psychological masks. And you know, psychological masks are those invisible walls and shields and cover-ups that each of us use to actually conceal the part of ourselves that we judge, the parts of ourselves that we don't like, the parts that we may be ashamed of. And so what do we do with these aspects of ourselves? We kind of detach from them, or we disown them. They still exist, but we separate ourselves from them and walk around with all manner of these cover-ups, which are known as our persona or psychological masks. And a couple of weeks ago, I said that we were going to talk about a number of these masks, and I'll just run through them They are the masks of the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the avoider, the overly competent, the victim, the apologizer. Not sure if I said that one. The bully, the passive one. There are a number of masks. There aren't an unlimited number, but there are a core number of these masks, and we can use them in combination, or we can kind of switch off. Pardon me. And if you were with me a couple of weeks ago, I talked about one of my masks. I had several, and the mask that I talked about was the mask of perfectionism. And I shared with you about how that got started in my life and why I adopted it and what it was like for me to carry that mask before I started to understand it and dismantle it. I still work on it because these masks never go away. And the objective isn't even really to have them go away completely. No one can walk around completely exposed and completely vulnerable, nor should we. But the idea for all of the masks we wear is to get to a point where we are in command of when we use them. So we're in control of them rather than the other way around. And I think the main issue with masks is that, we just have them on and we are compelled to walk the earth from the perspective of having this mask. I'll tell you what I mean, but I just want you to kind of remember, if you can, that the goal is not to get rid of the mask completely, but to have it be more fluid and to use it when we feel it's necessary, rather than simply have, the mask on tightly all the time. All right? So that's kind of our preamble. I noticed that the chat is warming up. Let me just say a quick hello to Leandra. Welcome. A very good evening to you too, all the way from Knoxville. And Dawn, welcome. Saying hi to everybody. Michelle, good evening. Good to have you. Patricia, always nice to see you. Thank you so much. So tonight, we're going to be talking about a mask that I didn't mention, and it is the mask of I am fine. I'm fine. Now, you may wonder, what the heck is the problem? Hi, Claudia. I see you there. Claudia says hi to everyone. Welcome. Claudia from Delaware. The mask of I'm fine. You may ask, what is the big deal? What's the problem with being fine all the time? Well, nothing. Unless, of course, you're compelled to be, always 24/7 in that mode. And you, or me, or one, can't tolerate anything but projecting this image to the world, which is really what masks do. They are our polished and curated image that we want the world to see. Simply put, it's what we want the world to think of us, because we are unconsciously or consciously worried and concerned that if anybody saw what lived beneath our mask, that which we might not feel good about or which we might feel ashamed of, bad things would happen. We might not be approved of. We might not be accepted. We might be rejected. We may not be loved. So we have a pretty heavy investment in our thought process, heavily invested in maintaining these masks. But what I want to continue talking about tonight is the implications of wearing these masks all the time and not examining what's underneath them. In this work, and certainly if you're tuning in and if you're here in the chat, you are someone who wants to be authentic. I know you're someone who wants to live your life in the best possible way. You want to be the best version, the highest version of yourself. You want to be open-hearted. You want to be grounded. And that's why you're here. And, you know, in this work, we either come from a place of love, or we come from a place of apprehension or inadequacy or fear. By the way, I'm getting some feedback that my voice might be garbled. Can you let me know how you're hearing me? And if others are hearing me as garbled, the producer can possibly do something about that. Am I coming through okay, or am I a little wonky? Somebody let me know in the chat. Yes, muffled. Oh, okay, Patricia says better now. I'm going to adjust the microphone. To my fabulous producer, Reverend Michael Mangus, can you hear anything unusual, or do I sound okay to you? Getting mixed reviews in and out.
You're fine. It's just that I'm trying to mix some music. So, but
trying to mix music. Okay.
I think I have you balanced now.
You think I'm balanced? Oh, it's my life's dream. My dream. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for the feedback. I appreciate that. So I was saying that in this work, we want to use our minds in a new way. We want to be new-minded. And you're tuning into a network called New Thought Media, where the whole idea is to have a new thought. Because as I was saying, when you get down to it, every thought we have is either in the direction of love or of unlove, of lack, of limitation, of striving, of inadequacy, right? So we don't walk around consciously thinking of those polar opposite directions, but I invite you to get more tuned in to the thoughts you have. Notice what you're thinking. Notice what you're thinking. Observe your thoughts, because we're either going in the direction of love, open-heartedness, acceptance of ourselves as well as others, or we are going in the direction and living in the service of perceived inadequacy and perceived not enoughness. So tonight, I invite us all to have the intention of using this conversation and using the material that we'll be talking about to enhance your direction of love. Okay, so I'm fine. What does it mean to be I'm fine? Well, I'm fine is the way some of us walk around projecting this image that no matter how I feel inside, no matter what's going on with me, my image sends a message: all's well, all's good, I've got this, no problem here. And not that there's anything wrong with that in and of itself, as I said, but when that is a cover and a shield for unwanted emotions, unwanted inner experiences, then we are walking around in some degree of hiding. And we can't be our authentic selves if we're hiding. Now, huge disclaimer. I got a question today on one of my posts, and it was a good question or comment. And the person said, and I really appreciated this, she said, well, how unfine she appears depends upon who she's speaking to. And to that I say, of course. So the big disclaimer that I want to put on this conversation is that the idea is not to walk around like what I call a raw nerve all the time. That's not the idea. But when we've been wearing our masks, and most of us adopt these masks when in childhood, so we've got a good few decades perfecting and polishing and tightening up the grip and the seal on these masks, we start to believe that our mask is really who we are. We start to believe that our persona is our essence. And at core, nothing could be further from the truth. Our mask is our adaptation to things that happen to us in childhood. Now, you know, nature, nurture. Each of us comes into this world with a certain constitution. You hear babies born, you know, in one family. And why did one baby right out of the gate seem to have a certain temperament and the other child had a completely different temperament? That's nature. That's DNA. That's chemicals. That is coming into the world in a certain way. That is largely a constant. But then there is our attitude and the way in which we get through life. And that has everything to do with nurturing, meaning whatever experiences we had in childhood, especially the ones that were uncomfortable or painful or confusing or unpredictable, things like that. We, as brilliant children, adopted out of thin air, I might add, which is fascinating to me. We adopted strategies with which to cope with those unpleasant or painful or frightening or traumatic circumstances. And the strategy that we used in childhood and the things that happened to us or the things that we went through before the age of 8, 9, 10, pretty much get baked into the cake until we used to believe, research had us believing that the cake was baked forever and very little could be changed fundamentally. But now we know with brain research that the brain is adaptable and something called neuroplasticity. I'm sure that's a term many of you have heard. We can alter these fundamental ways of behaving, but that doesn't happen automatically, nor does it happen overnight. That happens with intention and curiosity and a willingness to examine the ways in which we walk the earth and to examine how we take in information and examine the conclusions we draw from situations in our day-to-day life. Right? So masks. Okay, let me just see if everybody is with me here. Dawn says, fluid is good. In addition to making our masks more fluid, are the gifts in each mask. Wait, is that a question? Fluid is good. In addition to making our masks more fluid, are there gifts in each mask, or is there a mask that is just all negative? Okay, that's a very good question. I'm going to answer very briefly now, Dawn, in a pinch, and then I'm going to elaborate. There are gifts behind the masks. There are gifts. It may seem paradoxical, but the mask is hiding a pain that we have. It is hiding, covering, protecting us from something we don't want to experience again. Once was plenty enough. And so that which the mask is hiding is an aspect of our lives, our young lives, that contains energy, right? So if we went through something traumatic or a traumatic circumstance or an unfortunate circumstance or unpleasant, and we kind of took those feelings and put them aside and then put a mask on top of that, those original feelings have energy. And all energy has an upward trajectory. Emotions have an upward trajectory. That's why when we feel things, our veins bulge or we become flushed, our ears get red, or we tear up or sob, because emotions want to come up and out. But when we suppress them, we're suppressing a very basic energy. So there is a gift in freeing up that energy. That doesn't mean, and this is, I think, an important distinction, that doesn't mean when the energy is freed up, we necessarily act it out. If this is perhaps a bit more nuanced, but when that energy is freed up, we then are in a better position to evaluate what it is that we want to do with this energy. And usually when energy is freed up, there is a new realization. What was I hiding? Why didn't I want to let that up ever? What was it about that circumstance and that pain that I don't want to look at? And so when it comes into consciousness and we can look at it, the energy is freed up and we have an opportunity, you'll know this word, to integrate that experience into our consciousness, into the fabric of our being. So fundamentally, there are gifts behind the mask. Now, you ask, is there a mask that is just all negative? Well, I look at it this way. I think that all of us are expressions of divine intelligence, but some of us are more or less closed off from that divine intelligence or light or truth, if you will, or God or source. And the degree to which we are cut off from that, and some people are extraordinarily cut off. Extraordinarily cut off. And I believe those individuals walk the earth in a state of darkness, in a state of darkness. And that can be a dangerous thing, I think. A dangerous thing. I don't know who was it who said, was it Carl Jung? I'm not sure, who said, an unexamined mind is a dangerous thing. Plain old unexamined mind. Because we walk around and our unconscious spills out and we're not in command of it. We're not in conscious control of it. But those who walk around in states of practically total darkness, I think those people pose a danger. And so then it is up to the rest of us who hopefully are in, a higher state of consciousness and in a higher degree of light. It's up to us to figure out what to do in the presence of that darkness. So Dawn, I hope that kind of began to address your question there. Let me know if you have anything else. So back to my disclaimer, if I can retrace those breadcrumbs. The goal here is not to walk around as though you're not fine all the time. I'm a big believer in discernment. I'm a big believer in a time and a place for everything. But as I said before, when we wear these masks that were once adaptive in childhood, they can very easily over time become maladaptive in adulthood. And we misread our persona for our true self. So the problem is we forget who we are. We forget who we are. So the idea is not to be vulnerable 24/7. The idea is to allow ourselves to know what it is we think and feel on as frequent a basis as possible. And then we can choose how to interact with other people. Now, where did these masks come from? It is very likely that if you are an I'm fine person, and that's the image you really want to project to the world, it's possible and probable that in childhood, your needs and pleas for nurturance went unmet. And there could be many reasons for that. It could be your parent or caregiver was emotionally unavailable or preoccupied or addicted or under the influence of unhealed trauma. And so your parent or caregiver was simply not able to meet your need or needs. Either that, or the other, I think, common reason is that you perceived your parent was burdened or overwhelmed or perhaps ill, or maybe, you know, all of their attention or much of their attention went to taking care of a sick relative or a sibling who was ill. And so as incredibly brilliant children, what you and me, and so I'll say what we may have done, is we said, well, if they're not going to listen to me, if they're unavailable to me, if they're preoccupied, checked out, addicted, then they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to care. They're not going to hear me. No one is going to tend to my feelings. So why bother? And this is essentially what is underneath. This is the glue that keeps the I'm fine mask in place. No one's going to care. No one's interested in me or what I have to say. Or if you were the protective child who didn't want to burden your parents, you're like, you just concluded, well, you know what? I've got to take care of myself. Mom is working 2 jobs, dad is exhausted, or single parent, or whatever the case. I don't want to bother them. They have enough to deal with. I'm just going to hold it in, suck it up, do the best I can, and tell myself, this is key, tell myself, I don't have any needs. I'm good, thank you. I've got it. I don't need anything. Because if we don't need anything emotionally, what happens? We're less likely to get disappointed. So can you begin to hear the layers of strategy that go into adopting and maintaining these masks? It's really the mind's brilliant way and a child's brilliant way of self-protection. But these masks do not go anywhere. They don't dissolve. In fact, they get tighter with age. They really do. So the only way to understand what's beneath them is to do work and have conversations like we're having tonight, to begin to question and probe a little bit to start with. What is my mask covering? What is my mask covering? Quick story. When I was in grammar school, and by now you're beginning to understand what the nature of the school I went to. And my mother was one to say, she was tough in this regard. And she would say, if you got in trouble at school, which I never did, rarely, if you got in trouble, it must be because you did something and you deserved it. So, take it up at school. In effect, don't come crying to me. And so, as you may know, a few things happened at school. And when I would tell her about it, she would say, now as an adult, I know why she said this, but she would say, I hear it echoing in my mind now so vividly, she would say, stop your foolishness, stop your nonsense. Just, get it together. And I don't think she said get it together, but she did say, stop your foolishness, stop your nonsense. And I think she didn't want me to be soft or, too soft in the sense of susceptible. So I think she wanted me to be tough. She was in the Army. I shared that with you. And so I think she thought that would do me good. So A for effort, but technically that strategy did not work for me. But what conclusion did I draw? If she's going to tell me, stop my foolishness, my feelings, my concerns, my fears must be nonsensical. Therefore, I'm going to keep them to myself. Now, I think she did that because she was overwhelmed herself emotionally. I think she had a lot to contend with, and I don't think she had the bandwidth. And I didn't know it at the time, so I concluded I better keep these things to myself. And I did. and I suppressed a lot. And my mask between perfectionist and I'm fine, you can imagine it was very hard for someone to get close to me. They could get as close to me as, as was my mask. They could get as near to me as they could before they bumped into my persona. So that's how it goes. So let me know if you're with me. Let me know, first of all, if you can hear me, and if this is making sense, if this is registering. All right. We walk around with this because we're convinced that our parents and our caregivers didn't care, couldn't hear us, couldn't respond to our needs. And when we get into, well, I just want to say before I go there, there's a phenomenon called transference. Perhaps you've heard the term. Transference is that unconscious thing we all do where we take these core beliefs, these core, I guess we can call them currents or themes in our lives, and we project them onto the world unconsciously. What we had to do in our homes, I like to say at our kitchen table, became incorporated into who we are, our personality, and we project that same expectation onto the world. And we begin to view the world just as a background belief. We don't even know it's a belief. We just think it's a certainty. People aren't going to care what I have to say. It's just incorporated into our bubble, our thought bubble. No one cares what I have to say. No one is going to respond if I tell them I'm hurt or vulnerable. People like it when I'm strong, when I'm tough, when I'm a rock. People like it when I'm fine. No one's going to be there for me if I say otherwise. And so, if any of this resonates with you, where when you think about it, you do that as well. You expect to get the same response from the world as you got from your parents or caregivers, then it's projection. You're projecting onto the world and acting accordingly and believing accordingly. I think that's fascinating. That is the past dictating our present. And if that's how the present is, that's how the future is going to be. So we need new-mindedness. We need a new thought. We owe it to ourselves, and I submit we owe it to one another to be clear-headed, to be authentic, because we want to support each other into being the brightest light we can be. And because, apropos of Dawn's question, there is darkness in the world. There is cruelty. There is unspeakable inhumanity. And someone and someones are perpetuating that. So what do they have in their hearts? But we walk the earth side by side. And do we give up? Do we surrender to that darkness? Do we say, well, my hands are tied, there's nothing I can do? Or do we support one another and enhance one another's light and amplify it and associate with people who are willing and happy to amplify that light within us? Because then life becomes a different ballgame. And anyone who comes in our orbit, needs sunglasses. Needs spiritual and emotional and psychological sunglasses. I think that's a lovely thought. So on that note, I'm going to take a short break. Let's all digest this. When we come back, I may take a few questions, but I'm going to talk about what we can do to peek under that mask, how we can accomplish that, and what we might find exists there. And you can see if you think they're gifts. So if you're just tuning in, we are talking about psychological masks, that emotional or psychological glaze that we use to cover up unwanted emotions, unwanted parts of our personality. And it is a costume of sort, or as I call them, masks. All right. So we're talking tonight about the mask of I'm fine. That is the persona, the image that we project to the world that says, no matter what's going on inside, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need anything. I've got it all sewn up. And the problem with wearing that mask, as well as any other mask, is that it causes us to feel, without even realizing it, estranged from our true self. We confuse our mask for our true essence. And if we do that long enough, as in over the course of our lives, we forget who we are. And if we forget who we are on autopilot. If we forget who we can't really be intimate. We can go through the motions, but we can't really be intimate. We can't really let someone deep into our hearts. And we can't really respect ourselves. Why? Because we don't really know ourselves, and we're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid of that part of our personalities leaking out. And so on some level, and isn't this interesting? On some level, we live in a low level state of fight or flight because we're anti that part of ourselves. We label it bad. We say, oh, that's awful. That's whatever. I've heard people use such cruel terminology. That's abhorrent. That's disgusting. That's bad. That's shameful. And so we're at odds with ourselves. And then we try to be happy. Very difficult. So I'm going to talk about what we can do to peek beneath the masks. And number one, number two, number three. We have to be willing to get still. Because the other thing that happens with our masks is we are outrunning, outpacing what we truly feel inside. So when that is going on, we avoid being still, because on some level we feel that if we're still, our emotions can overwhelm us. So we try to stay ahead of them. But really, numbers 1, 2, and 3 are the willingness to get still with ourselves and, question. Do I say I'm fine all the time? Do I tell myself, this is the most important part, do I tell myself I'm fine when I'm not? Have I needed to view myself as fine when the actual truth of the matter is that if I'm quiet, I know that I'm not fine, meaning something is bothering me, meaning something deep within is gnawing at me or haunting me or calling for my attention, but I never gave it because I was afraid of what would happen if I opened myself up to that part of myself. So getting still, asking the question, and number 3, is it number 3? I don't know if it's really number 3, compassionate recognition. This is really what I think is so important. So compassionate recognition is compassion, obviously, compassion with insight. So, when I was a little girl in the 3rd grade and my mother said, stop your foolishness or stop your nonsense, let me, as I rerun that movie in my head, let me freeze frame. I could see myself. I was like 3 feet tall. Okay. I was 7 or 8 years old. I can tell you exactly. Let me freeze frame and let me understand what little Kathy was feeling in that moment when Mom said, stop your nonsense. Take it up with sister. Little Kathy felt disappointed, hurt, and all alone. wow, how do I feel toward my younger self as I look at her in that moment? How do I feel? How do you feel hearing this? You're an empathic group of people. I bet you feel something. My God, there's so much in the chat. I have to hurry. I want to get to you. This is about you, this show. So the recognition is coupled with compassion. I understand how I felt. I understand why I felt that way. And in my adult life, I can even understand why my mother responded like that. And so now I have the insight. I put such a premium on insight, knowing how we operate, knowing what other people experience of us in relationship with us. What is it like for the other person to hang out with us, to date us, to be married to us? Well, if I'm wearing my mask, I have to consider it might not always be easy for that person. But with compassionate recognition, you go back to that home movie and you give that child the time and the attention and the love she deserved. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's how we connect with ourselves. And when we do that, we no longer need the mask so tightly, so rigidly in place, because we've touched that pain. But along with the pain, we've added recognition and compassion and understanding and empathy toward our younger self. And where possible, after we've done that for ourselves, then toward the person who disappointed us. Once I acknowledged my own pain and unmet need, then I could say, what must have been going on with my mom, who was a good person? You know, why did she respond to me that way? Well, I can understand this and I can understand that. Okay. And that goes a long way toward dissolving the tension that we hold within ourselves, the division that we maintain. Okay. Enough of that. I'm going to go to the chat. All right. Let's see. I don't know where to begin. This is in no particular order because I don't know what came in. Okay. Kathy, how would you handle it if someone responded honestly to how are you with something vulnerable like I'm struggling and not feeling myself right now, or I'm going through something difficult at this time, but the other person reacts with indifference or dismissal? All right. I think you go on, Michelle, to say, I ask this because it often seems that when people ask, how are you? It's more out of habit or a social convention rather than a genuine desire to hear a real answer. Well, I agree. You know, I think we're all programmed to be kind of superficial. You know, if I'm at 7-Eleven and, you know, someone casually asks me, how are you doing? How are you? I'm probably going to say, I'm well. And how are you? But if it's not such a casual, such a passing relationship, if this is someone I have any kind of connection with, and it's not in a boardroom, I'm not at a meeting, or I'm not in a Zoom call or something, I will likely say, well, you know, at the moment, you know, I'm okay. I mean, I'm not, you know, dying, but to tell you the truth, I'm going through something and I'm dealing with it and I'm processing it, and I'm glad to be able to do that. Or, if you want to say I'm okay, meaning you don't have to get nervous, I'm not falling apart, but I'm feeling a bit subdued. I have something on my mind and I'm in deep thought about it. Or I'd like to get together with you tonight, but you know what? I have something going on. Something's gnawing at me. It's got my attention. It's throwing me off. And I think I just need to be with my thoughts tonight. That's how I think, without getting too heavy, without making it into a therapy session. I think that's how we honor ourselves. We give ourselves the time of day, truth. We're not acting. And we honor the relationship, because I think, Michelle, implied in that answer is, I trust you enough, person, to handle what I'm saying. And you might even be giving that person permission to do the same. Okay. So it's not revealing the details necessarily, but it's an acknowledgement. Yeah, I have something going on, and I don't feel light and airy and fluffy, and I'm not the life of the party, and I'm kind of subdued. Okay. I hope that helped, Michelle. Let's see. Leandra. Yes, hear you well and can relate to this for sure. I think I've isolated myself to some degree at this stage of my life, not wanting to burden others. I'm realizing I need to share with others more. Mm. Well, somewhere, Leandra, you're a sensitive person. You're an empathic person. You're mindful of what others are going through, so you don't want to burden other people. But sharing, think about it. How do you feel when someone shares with you? Now, let me outline the parameters. I'm not talking about oversharing. I'm not talking about TMI. I'm not talking about at inappropriate times. But, otherwise, how do you feel when someone shares their truth? If someone said, I'm subdued or I'm going through something, I bet you would feel, well, I'm going to tell you how I would feel. I don't want to put, and Leandra, you can say if you feel similarly or not. I feel honored. I really feel honored. And they don't have to say one detail, but the fact that they trusted me with that truth actually honors me. And it is my pleasure to give that person the space they need. It's my pleasure to say, thank you for telling me. You're safe with me. No more and no less most of the time. But in that exchange, it's not like I'm going for the Academy Award of being the happiest person. So that would be my response. Okay, Claudia, that's very true. Michael. And do you mean Michael or Michelle? And it's for that reason I hold back from opening up to telling what I'm really going through, specifically if it's a difficult time. Yeah. Well, now let me say, if someone reacts with indifference or dismisses, let me borrow a page from Mel Brooks and from my own writing. Let them, so what? Who cares? I mean, it might pinch and it might be disappointing, but it may have more to do with that person than it does with you. That person may not be in the head to hear you. That person may not know how to respond. That person may never or rarely engage with someone who is willing to be that authentic, honest on that level. So their dismissal might come from that place. Or I've certainly done this, we may hear it as dismissal when maybe the person feels a little helpless. Sometimes people don't know how to respond. I think so many of us are conditioned that when we hear something, bad news, or someone is struggling, we feel we have to solve their problem. We feel we have to come in with some kind of answer. We feel we have to resolve things, do something. And someone might simply feel awkward, and we read it as indifference or dismissal. Sometimes they don't care. I question, wow, and what are we doing talking to that person if they don't care about something like that? I wouldn't be surprised if more often than indifference, it's I don't know what to do with this information. So I find it helps when I share with people, if I kind of give like a heads up and I say, listen, I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to solve this. I just need you to listen. I just need to hear myself talk and get it out. And if you can just listen and be a safe space and a container, you'll be doing a lot for me. So let me tell you about why I feel subdued. Does that help? Okay. part of being authentic, part of being a wide receiver and a self-love builder, and as Tam McKeeve said, a maverick soul, is we're grounded and able to handle what we feel. We're not as hungry or needy for other people's approval. Of course, we want to connect, but not everyone is going to be able to do it. Now, if it's someone on whom you really depend, I mean, if it's a partner and your partner can't hear you or something like that, then that bears a conversation. But it's a conversation where you would have to, I think, dig a little deeper and not make the person wrong, but get curious. Curiosity, I believe, is the antidote to a lot of things, to depression, to feeling neglected. Why do I say that? Because in curiosity, you can ask the next question, such as, gee, I don't know what to make of your response. I've said that I'm feeling subdued, and I heard your response in a way that left me feeling like maybe you're not that concerned, but I don't want to assume. I want to check that out with you. Is what I'm hearing what you meant to convey? You know, you can maybe say that with a little lighter step, a little heavier step. But if someone said to me, listen, I don't want to assume you mean what I heard you say, what I think you mean, so I'm going to go to the trouble of asking you so that I don't jump to conclusions. I tell you, I feel honored. I really do. I love when that happens. And I enjoy asking people. I enjoy checking out. Because sometimes the person will say, oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I just, I just didn't know what to say. And we can handle that. And then you thank them for that, for their honesty. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I hope that sheds more light. I am watching the clock and we don't have much time. Let's see. Did I get to everybody? I hope I did. Did I? I think I saw Still Bill. Still Bill, hi there. I remember when I thought that there was nothing behind the mask, and then was afraid that I wouldn't like whatever was there. Yes. That is one of the main reasons why we don't bother to look, if it even occurs to us to look, Bill, because we're like, I'm not going to like what's back there. I'm not going to like what's back there. But I'll tell you what's back there. What's back there is what happened to us. That's what's back there. And maybe how we responded to what happened to us when we didn't examine ourselves. Maybe, I mean, I'm certainly, I could speak to this. I've done things that when I look back, I cringe. But, we cringed because we didn't know a better way to handle whatever might have been happening to us. So, yeah, wow, I made that move back then because I didn't really understand my feeling. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to do with my feeling. So I lashed out, or I withdrew, or I left, or I was snarky or sarcastic or critical, or I jabbed. I'm sorry I did that. And if you can't apologize to the person, because we can't always, it might have been decades ago, or the person might be deceased or what have you, you apologize in consciousness. Acknowledge in consciousness. Oh, I did that because I didn't know better. But you know what? I know better now. And that interaction is going to help keep me on course, because I don't want to feel that way again, and nor do I want to cause anyone else to feel that way. But that's a very legitimate reason. I might not like what's in there. Cue the self-judgment, right? Cue the self-judgment. So back to Michelle's question, Michelle, you're afraid of someone dismissing or being indifferent. I submit that that's how we are with ourselves way too often. And I'm fine. It keeps us at that level where we actually treat ourselves the way we may have been treated in childhood. So if someone was indifferent or told us to stop our nonsense and didn't, ask us about our true feeling, we've now taken that baton and we apply it to ourselves and we treat ourselves the same way. But we need a new thought. We need to be new-minded. We need to have compassionate recognition and take that little girl, that little boy, that child within us, and whoever they may be, give them the time of day, give them what they deserved, which is our interest, not our indifference, our curiosity and our honoring and our love and our embrace. Because when we do that, then we have our own back. We actively love ourselves. We become a bodyguard to ourselves, a quiet bodyguard, just a presence that says, you're not going to get to that child unless you come through me. And the adult me has the skills to be able to handle what you may be conveying to me or throwing my way. So I could talk about this topic forever and ever. I love it so much. Thank you so much. I apologize if I didn't get to everyone. Clearly, this is a rich topic, and clearly I am over time. Dear ones, be well. Have a great week. Let's take one another with us. And if you're feeling subdued, give yourself the room to feel subdued this week. All right. Much love. Be well. I'll meet you back here next week where we'll talk about another mask. You've been listening to Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach on Who Do You Think You Are? I'll see you next time. Good night.